Good evening and welcome to my channel Centuries Untold. My name is Wahid Qureshi. Viewers, today's video is part 2 of my previous video, which was on the origin of the Mongols. And in our last video, we finished when Genghis Khan died in 1227. So in my previous video, I mentioned that I will make a part 2 of this, the origin of Mongols, because it's just a vast topic. And in one video, about 35-40 minutes, it would not be possible to cover a lot of information. So here is the second part of the origin of Mongols, but this time in this video, I'm going to try to give you some facts, some information, beyond what you may have already known, but some more additional information that you may not have heard before. Okay, and that's my whole idea of my making these videos, to give you, my viewers, a new twist of a new fact, separate myth from the facts. Okay, so let's go ahead and start our second part, which is, I'm going to call it the rise of the Mongol Empire this time, because it is really at this junction in 1227, when the Genghis Khan died, the Mongol Empire that he established started to rise on the different levels, on different parts of the world. Okay, so let's start. So what happens when Genghis Khan dies in 1227 in Mongolia proper, which is called Karakorum, right? At the time of his death, viewers, Genghis Khan was roughly about 68 years old. Some account says 69, some say 65, but around that age. Good. Now, he had 4 sons, okay? And I'm going to talk about each son and give you some background of each one of his sons and what they did and what area they covered for their empire, and if they had any impact, his sons and their sons, meaning Genghis Khan's grandsons and their sons, what impact they had that time. Okay, so Genghis Khan had 4 sons, like I said. His first son was named Jochi. Okay, the second son was Chuktai. And in sometime it's spelled with T, like T as a Choktai, and sometimes it's spelled simply as CH, Choktai. Okay, the third son was Gyok, and the fourth son was Tulai, Tuloi, I believe, Tulai. So he had 4 sons. Okay, now what happens, his first son, Jochi, as I mentioned before, his 3 brothers, always kind of doubted that he was their real brother, because there was some story behind it, which I mentioned in my previous video. But nevertheless, Genghis Khan always considered him his son. Okay, but what happens in 1227, his eldest son, Jochi, dies even before his father. Okay, which was a shock to Genghis Khan, obviously. Okay, now let's talk about this Jochi. Okay, like as I said, he was the eldest son of Genghis Khan, and he died within the life of his father, which is roughly, I think I would say, 1 or 2 years before Genghis Khan himself died. Okay, now since Jochi had died before his father died, so what happened? What kind of lands he inherited? So Genghis Khan gave him and his sons, meaning his grandsons, the land which is today roughly known as Northern Asia, meaning area that roughly covers, I would say, southern Russia, northern Turkey, like Armenia, Azerbaijan, and gold Crimea. That northern part of the area. In my map, you can see it. That area, basically, Jochi's sons and their descendants controlled and governed and ruled. Okay, you also have heard Golden Heart, Blue Heart, White Heart. That's what the area Jochi and his sons and their sons controlled. Okay. So Jochi's sons controlled, and now viewers, because they occupied that area, which is basically present day Armenia, Azerbaijan, and that Crimea area, Kazakhstan on the top a little bit. So that was an important area, right? So what Jochi's sons did and their sons did, they continued expanded westward along the Black Sea on the top side. Okay, and they are the one. Jochi's descendants are the one who eventually got into fight with Muscovites, which if you watch my video on the history of Russia, I mentioned that. So it is Jochi's and his descendants who actually got into those areas, eventually, occupied part of Russia for a long time. And that's how you got this word Golden Heart, Blue Heart, and White Heart. Okay? Okay. Now, and it was his descendants, his sons and descendants, who actually also moved further west and attacked, Eastern European countries like Hungary, like even Poland in some respect, Ukraine. So they got that far, okay, and with success. So far, at least for Russian people, that means they were under Mongol for almost 200 years, long time. And the Russians were paying basically homage, tax, annual tax, tribute, what we call to them. So it was Jochi and his descendants. Now, viewers, interestingly enough, the fate would have it, like one of Jochi's grandson, his name was Burke Khan, sometimes it's called Burke, sometimes it's called Burke Khan. In around 1260s, I would say 1250s probably, he became Muslim. Yeah, he became Muslim. Because he became Muslim, so he started to fight. Basically, he aligned himself with the Muslim sultans of, what you call it as, what is today's part of Turkey. And it was called the Sultanate of Rum. That means the sultans of the Rome, like Roman sultans. That's what it means basically. So Burke Khan aligned himself with those Muslim rulers, and he started to stop the Mongol expansion into the Muslim lands. Especially he had a big, clash with his cousin Hulagu Khan. I will talk about him in a second. But that is Jochi Khan and his descendants who ruled, like I said, above northern Asian lands, covering large swath of land around Black Sea, Golden Horn, and Blue Horn for centuries. Jochi Khan himself never was a great Khan. Okay, now let me give you a quick definition of what the great Khan mean. They were all Khans, but what is great Khan? So great Khan is the person who directly succeeded Genghis Khan, and when he dies, the next Khan who was elected, basically they elect a king, the next king, but is elected not by general public obviously that time, but elected by the princes, the what you call the close high-ranking courtiers, they will get together. It's called Koratrai, as I mentioned, and they it will be a council, and they will elect who will be the next Khan. Once that person becomes the Khan, basically as equal to king, the emperor, he is known as Great Khan. Okay, so that's the difference. They are all Khans, but one who becomes the top Khan becomes a Great Khan. Like in modern time, any government has ministers, right? But who becomes a top minister becomes a prime minister, right? So similar, same concept, but with more powers. Okay. Now let's talk about Genghis Khan's second son. Like I said, Chugtai. Who was this Chugtai? Chugtai was, as I mentioned, Genghis Khan's second son. He was able person, but he had not displayed more warrior nature, more warrior skills as compared to his other brothers. So Chugtai was more, I would not say more, but equally interested in legal reforms, because he thought that now we are no longer a nomadic people. We are no longer, a tribal society. We are now more organized. We are empire now. So what we need to do is to make, like settle down and establish some legal system, some rules, policies, just like any empire will do. So he was more interested in that. And he's actually credited with first, introduce legal reforms, legal code in the Mongol Empire. So it was Chugtai, his second son of Genghis Khan. I mean, Genghis Khan had a general framework of the legal stuff, the code, how to conduct a business, things like that. But he documented it. He made it more formal. He basically established it. This is the legal code. This is the legal rules. This is the financial matters, how to run it of the Mongol Empire. So that was a difference. So he did that. Obviously, he was not the only person, but he led that effort. There was a whole group of people who put this together for him. Okay. So this was Chugtai. So he died after Genghis Khan's death. Okay. So what region he inherited? Now Chugtai got inherited his father's western provinces, which is roughly, you can see in the map, which is roughly today's like Central Asian states, like especially the Khwarazm Shai, territories that were conquered during the Genghis Khan's time. So he got western part of the Mongol Empire, which is roughly today is part of Central Asian countries. So Chugtai and his son settled there, and they took that area. Okay. Now, viewers, I will also say this Chugtai and his sons and their sons have a long lineage. Okay. How is that? This is the son of Genghis Khan, Chugtai, who later on became, I would say, the ancestor of another famous conqueror, Timur, which is also known as Timur the Lame, right? Later on in the 14th century. And through Timur the Lame, and like in some part of the world, he's simply called Amir Timur, right? But in other part of the world, he's known as Timur Lame. Okay? Now, most people know that through Timur, through Chugtai, through Timur, and through Timur, the Mughal Empire emerged, like in Indo-Pak subcontinent, okay? Like Mughal Empire, like Babur. So Babur was a direct descendant of this person, Timur. And sometimes it's called Babur, B-A-B-U-R. And sometimes it's just simply called Babur. Okay? So this Babur, who was a founder of the Mughal Empire in Indo-Pak, subcontinent, including Afghanistan, was a direct descendant of this person, Timur. And Timur had a direct link with Chuktai. So you can see that link, right? So that's why in the Mughal Empire, sometimes also known as Chuktai Empire. Okay? So that's where Chuktai and his sons ruled. And like I said, eventually they were kicked out in those areas like Samarkand, Uzbekistan, all those areas by the time the Babur came and he fled to Afghanistan, eventually into Indo-Pak subcontinent. That's a separate history. You can watch my video on the Mughal march toward Pakistan, where I talk about the rise of the Mughal Empire. Okay. So that was his second son, Chuktai. Now his third son, Mongol, who was actually elected. You know, it's like what you call in Christian European monarchies, what you call it, a crown prince. Okay. So his third son, Mongol, was chosen in 1223 as the next successor, as the next great Khan by his father, Genghis Khan. Okay. Now, this third son of Genghis Khan, why did Genghis Khan chose him over his two elder brothers, like Jochi and Chuktai? Why? Was he a great warrior? No. Did he conquer a lot of land for his father? No. Was he did he bring anything on the table for his father? No. So why did he choose? Why did he choose him? Because Genghis Khan was a very smart person, obviously. And all of his sons, he knew his four sons very well. So all of his sons, he knew that all three of his sons, other three sons, were good warriors, good spirit, and they will expand the empire. But he knew that this third son of him is not a great warrior. He's not going to expand the empire. Okay? But what qualities he had that Genghis Khan thought he's more suitable to lead this new empire? So, couple of qualities this third son had, Mongol. One, he treated people more fairly. He provided more justice to the people. And Genghis Khan saw that in few instances. He saw that in his son. He also, established more safe trade routes for their caravans to pass through their land. So Genghis Khan saw that side of his third son, and he thought he's more suitable to lead his empire. He will make it more stabilized than his other three brothers because they are more into war, battles. So, and Genghis Khan was right about that because once his third son, Mongol, became a great Khan, he would obviously, as a great Khan, he will tell his other three brothers, or two brothers now, because the oldest one was died even during the Genghis Khan's life, that okay, now you got these territories from my father, right? I have like Jochi's sons, his nephews, and his two brothers, Juktai and Tolai, right? So now you guys go ahead and expand the empire. I'm sitting in the capital of Karakoram. I'm going to make sure that empire is stabilized, right? Internally speaking. You guys go ahead and expand the empire. And that's exactly what Genghis Khan envisioned. That his other two sons and his grandsons will expand it. While this third son, who he's going to make his successor, will stabilize internally. That's exactly what happened. Okay? And and he lived until I believe 1242 or 12, he lived 15-20 years after his father's death. And then they chose the next great Khan. Okay? Okay, so that was the third brother who became Mongol, who became the great Khan. Okay, now his youngest son, the last son, Tolai. Now this Tolai was of all of Genghis Khan's sons, this was the most cunning and more, like a scheming, more clever of all his brothers. Okay, but again, the fate will have it that he himself and his sons and his grandsons will continue to control large swath of land and continue to grow the empire in their own right. Okay. Now this Tolai also inherited part of Western Asia, which is roughly part of Central Asian areas, and also some of the heartland of the Mongolia proper. Okay. Now this guy Tolai, like I said, he was most scheming of all of his brothers, viewers. Now, but again, as fate will have it, his he had two sons, basically. He had more than two sons, but two are the most famous sons in history, and you all have heard their names. One was Hulagu Khan, and he is also known as, in some part of the world, as Hulagu Khan. But his real name was Hulagu Khan. Okay, there he was Tolai's son, and his other son was the ever famous Kublai Khan, who actually established a one dynasty in China, who basically took control of China proper and part of Korea. Kublai Khan, and we all know Kublai Khan because why? Because during Kublai Khan's time in China, famous explorer and traveler Marco Polo traveled in his court, and he stayed in China with Kublai Khan for 17 years. So he wrote a lot of accounts about Chinese culture in the 13th century, that means around 1270, 1280, 1290, and how Chinese empire under Kublai Khan worked. Like he even gave details so much about day-to-day activities and what kind of scientific research going on in China at that time. The gunpowder, the paper, chess, like a little bit more advanced form of chess, and so many other things. Medicines, herbal teas were all going through the research in China during that. And Marco Polo actually wrote all of that accounts, which is a similar account, that was done about 50, 80 years after Marco Polo, and another explorer by the name of Ibn Battuta, who traveled in 14th century, like I said, about 70, 80 years after Marco Polo. Okay? So Tolai had these two famous sons, and here are and many other sons too. So this guy, Hulagu, he's more notoriously known in the Islamic world. Why? Because he's the one who in 1258 besieged the Islamic Abbasid Empire's capital, Baghdad, in 1258, viewers. And in spite of his cousin, Barke Khan, who was up in the north, around Black Sea region, he was a Khan of that area. He actually told his cousin not to, capture the Abbasid Islamic capital of Baghdad. Because why? Because as I told you, Barke Khan had become a Muslim, and he told his cousin Hulagu, don't touch Baghdad. That's Islamic world's capital, this Abbasid Empire capital. Don't touch that. But he didn't listen. And viewers, there's a story behind it. The story says that this guy Hulagu Khan had a Christian wife. I would say the Christian community at that time in Western Asia which is also known as Middle East, had some Christian minorities living there during the time of Crusades that had ended roughly about 60, 70 years ago, right? So there is a remnant of some small Christian population along the coast of Palestine, Lebanon, that area. So, and I want to say that he had a wife who was most likely a Nestorian. Nestorian Christians were missionaries, some Christian community who was living in that part of the world at that time. So the story goes like, so his wife, who was a Christian woman, had some kind of score to settle with him, and she just really did not like the Muslims, and generally speaking. So she actually told her husband Holagu to, you need to attack the Islamic world's capital, Baghdad, that time, Abbasid Caliphate, and you capture that, and you will earn a great name. So that story, if you want to believe that story, the story goes Holagu actually turned his attentions toward Baghdad that time. And in spite of his cousin Barke Khan's warnings, he, unfortunately, I would say, for Muslims from Islamic world, he was able to, besiege and capture the city of Baghdad in 1258. And viewers, most of you have already heard what he did, what Mongol armies did when they captured the city. They burned the city, they massacred the whole population, so much so they captured the caliph that time, the Abbasid caliph, who was literally old guy, and they put him in the prison first, and then after a few days they brought him out in open field and they wrapped him in a carpet, and they run the horses on the top of it. So he trembled inside his carpet while the horses were running on the top of him. So this poor caliph, poor king, died. And with him, the Abbasid Empire came to an end. But that's just one political part of it, the ramification of the capture of Baghdad, the fall of Baghdad, right? But the other, more importantly, in my opinion, was the scientific work, the research work on medicines. Because you got to understand, during 13th century, 1200s, 1100s, Baghdad, along with China, were the two great centers of learning, along with Cairo as well. Okay? But Baghdad and China, the Beijing that time, I would say, were the two main hub of all over the world's learning centers. Scientific research, medicine research, astrology. Books were written over this period of centuries that these, barbarians, I would say at that time, Mongols, they had no value for those work, research. They literally throw those books into the Afrit, river, Tigris River, literally. And because that time the books were written in ink, black ink, it is said that the river turned black. Why? Because they throw so many books into the river that the ink melt, obviously, and the river turned black along with the blood of the people. So when they were doing when Mongol soldiers, when Hulagu Khan was doing this, he had no idea what he was doing, basically. How much, damage he was causing to the rest of the world by throwing this great scientific research work that was collected over the period of centuries. Okay? I will give you a little parallel to that, okay? Later on, in 15th century, around 1492, when Spain in Iberian Peninsula was recaptured by Christian kings from, Ferdinand and Isabella, they did pretty much the same thing over there. What they did, in their prejudice, in their ignorance, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Castile and Aragon, they also burned down when they captured Granada and other Muslim areas, they also did pretty much the same thing. They, any book they got their hand on that was written in Arabic script, they grabbed that book and they burned it without even giving a second thought. This is a work of science, scientific research, astronomy, all those kinds of. They didn't pay attention because they were so blinded by the prejudice. And a lot of research also was done by the Jews in Spain that time. So their books were same thing, they were burned down. They thought these are the books of some, those people like Muslims and Jews. We should burn them. So pretty much same thing they did in Spain. That's how Hulagu Khan behaved, in utter disregard of humanity and utter disregard of all the great work that was collected for centuries. Okay, so viewers, so Hulagu Khan, after this, this conquest of his, the fall of Baghdad, he settled down, and him and his family, basically his sons and their descendants, settled down in, like I said, what is today Iran, basically proper, and they founded a dynasty over there. It's called Ilkhanate dynasty, basically. Okay, now after the fall of Baghdad, Hulagu basically had his attentions turned toward Egypt, because his wife, who was with him, his Christian wife who was with him, she was telling him that now, you should also go to Egypt, take care of Egypt, because that's the only remaining Muslim kingdom beside the Delhi Sultanate in Indo-Pak subcontinent, right? So he prepared an army around 1259 and started toward Egypt. But while he was on his way to Egypt, his cousin Barke Khan, who was furious because he didn't listen to him, and he did invade and destroy Baghdad. So he told him, do not venture anymore into Muslim areas, lands. I will stop you. But Hulagu didn't listen to that, as most generals will not listen, because they think they're arrogant, right? So while Hulagu was on his way to Egypt, the great Khan in Karakoram in Mongolia proper died. So that means all the royal family, princes, and all high-ranking people have to go back, attend to elect the next Khan. So Hulagu left his army with his most ablest general. His name was Shaggy Toto, some called Tutu, but Shaggy Toto, right? And he told him to continue marching toward Egypt and give me the great news of conquest of Egypt. So he himself took small portion of his army, about 10,000 soldiers, and he moved back to elect the next great Khan. Okay? So this great general, Shaggy Toto, continued march toward Egypt. So when he got to what is today is Palestine area, the Egyptian Sultan at that time was Mamluk, by the way. Mamluk is another Turkish and descendant people who were ruling Egypt that time. And the Sultan and his most ablest general, Beberus, decided not to wait for the Mongol army to arrive in Cairo, Egypt. Instead, they decided to march toward them, like in Palestine, and meet them over there. So most of you probably have heard this famous battle that was fought on September 3rd, 1260. It's called the Battle of Ain Jalut. Ainjalott, some Ain Jalut. Okay? And unfortunately for Mongols and fortunately for Muslim side, the Muslim sides won a decisive battle. Hulagu's ablest general, Shaggy Toto, was killed. And his head was sent back to Hulagu, who was, by the way, at that time, had done with electing the next great Khan, and he was on his way to join basically this general. But when he heard the news of this disastrous defeat, he was furious. And it is said that he literally had a brain hemorrhage and died. Okay. Now, this victory at Ain Jalut in 1260 sent a shockwaves across the globe at that time. Why? Because it basically broke the invincibility of the Mongol, that they cannot be defeated. They will win every single battle, war. Now, this was the first battle that they lost, and terribly lost. Okay? So this broke their myth that the Mongols cannot be defeated. Yes, they can be defeated, and this great Muslim army under Bibras proved that. Okay, so this this battle had also a psychological effect on minds of thousands of people around the world. It also gave a good boost to Russians in the top. They can also kick out Mongols at some, which they did eventually. So viewers, this is how Genghis Khan's fourth son, Tolai, and his sons' descendants, ruled this area. So as you can see, viewers, that's how the empire rose through his four sons and his grandson children, all part of the world. Now, mind you, at that point, in one point, the Mongol Empire was the largest empire the world had seen. It stretched all the way from Sea of Japan, like Korea, Eastern China, all the way to borders, parts of Ukraine in Eastern Europe, all the way down to up to Afghanistan, all the way up north, all to Russia. So it was a huge empire, viewers. But I will also tell you this: unlike the more dark side of Mongol Empire was when they conquered cities, they butchered people, they created pyramid of skulls, they destroyed learning centers, they did everything bad, right? Yes, they did. But there was the other side. That side was more humane. That means within their empire, this huge empire, they had stability. Their trade routes were safe. Nobody would dare attacking those trade routes, caravans. Why? They knew there was this severe penalties, laws. They uphold laws within their empire. It was a multi-ethnic society. A lot of people were living there, different races, different ethnicities, different languages, different religions. But they tolerated them. They provide stability in all that area for more than 100 years. Eventually, not during Genghis Khan's time, but during his sons and their sons' time. And as fate would have it, like Hulagu's cousin Barke Khan, who became Muslim on the Black Sea area, similarly, Hulagu's grandson became Muslim eventually, and his sons became Muslims, and they integrated with the Iranian culture, Iranian society. Okay, similarly, his brother Kublai Khan in China and his descendants were eventually kicked out of China, and the native Chinese dynasties took over. So Kublai Khan's descendants also assimilated, integrated with the Chinese culture society. So that literally leaves the Mongolia proper, which is today's modern state of Mongolia. That only one state, that area kept the original of the Mongol traditions, culture, religion, which we see today in the state of Mongolia, which is basically buffered between Russia on the north and China in the south. So viewers, I hope you have liked my video, and I'm sure it has given you some more information about the rise of Mongol Empire and Genghis Khan's sons. Please, if you like my video, hit the bell icon and subscribe to my channel so you can watch my other videos, which I would encourage you to watch, and give me your comments. What do you think about the Mongol videos? This is part 2, and I'm coming inshallah with more interesting videos for my viewers soon. Thank you very much for watching my video, and good evening.